Welcome to Technado with Don Pizzette, featuring sysadmin expert Don Pizzette, security specialist Daniel Lowry, and Peter.
Hello and welcome to Technado. I'm your host, Peter Van Rysdam, and I am joined, as always, by Don Pizzette. Don, how you doing?
I am doing great, getting ready for the holiday season. A lot of fun and excitement. Going through an ISO 27001 audit right now, so that's
fun and excitement.
Holiday magic, yeah. Just fun all around.
Santa, hopefully he brings you a compliance stamp, right?
That's right. The gift of findings and nonconformities.
It's right in the stocking. And Daniel, how are you?
Oh man, I guess I'm doing okay. I'm having a good one.
Where's Thanksgiving fit on your favorite holidays list?
I actually like Thanksgiving because the food is amazing.
Yeah. It's right there at the top for me.
It really,
But you're kicking off the season. You know, yeah, sure, Christmas is better. You get stuff.
Right.
But when Christmas happens, it's done then. And it's back to work for another year.
That's true. That's true. I mean, I guess you could go New Year's if you're in the States or whatever,
Daniel, I'm disappointed you missed an opportunity to go like full-on Gremlins reference and explain how when you were a child, your father was killed by a turkey.
Yeah.
And so you don't celebrate Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
It's probably the best Thanksgiving movie, right?
We just go to therapy on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
We were debating, actually, if we're going to go off the rails right away, on good Thanksgiving movies, because there's not many. You got the Charlie Brown Thanksgiving.
There's not.
But the best one, Addams Family Values.
Oh, it is a Thanksgiving movie.
When they do the Thanksgiving play, that is the funniest crap on the entire planet.
Thank you for reminding me about that, because I'm trying to compile a list of Thanksgiving movies. And right now, it's a short list. Yeah. It's obviously Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, right? Mm-hmm. And then I've got Grumpy Old Men.
All right.
This is during Thanksgiving time, which is a phenomenally funny movie. If you haven't watched it, I highly recommend it. I will throw on Addams Family Values on there because you are absolutely right about that. And Dutch with Ed O'Neill.
I was thinking Dutch, but I couldn't remember if it was Christmas or Thanksgiving.
It is Thanksgiving, so you are welcome.
What is the animated movie where the turkeys go back in time?
We just started to watch that the other day.
Is this new?
It's decent. 5
years.
Okay, yeah, I haven't heard it.
It's about a turkey is the presidential turkey. He gets pardoned, and they go back in time. The movie sucked. I haven't seen the whole thing, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
They go back in time to the first thing.
The qualifier for getting on my movie list is it has to be at least entertaining and good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, turkey's like, have you tried ham?
Yeah.
And that's the end of the movie. All right, well, let's get in to the gift that keeps on giving, tech news. And start with our first article, which comes to us from bleepingcomputer.com. Microsoft Defender network protection generally available on iOS and Android. And I know we talked a few, probably months back, about how Defender was coming to your Mac and other platforms, and now we're talking about mobile. So what I was curious about with this one, I couldn't tell, is this something that you put on your phone or you put on your network at the office so the phones that are on your network are protected?
So it's actually really confusing. And just real quick, the movie's called Freebirds. And so it's really confusing. Not the headline, just the concept. So Microsoft Defender is already out for iOS and Android and Mac OS and Windows. So it's already out there. What's going on is a new feature has come out, and that feature is called network protection. And it doesn't protect your network. It protects you from the network you're on. So one thing that I know, Daniel, you talk about it in a lot of the security training you do, is that it's super easy for an attacker to stand up a rogue wireless access point, or like you can get the Wi-Fi pineapple from Hack5, things like that.
Yeah, it's like Charles Bronson when, can I stand up a Wi-Fi anywhere I want? I'd like to see you try and stop me. Right, and then he waves his gun.
So it is effective. So basically, Microsoft Defender has a new feature where it will help to detect rogue access points. And when somebody brings up a new AP that shouldn't be there, and it gives you a warning, if you try and connect to a network that is not a trusted network, it will protect you from that network. And on a desktop, that's not really a feature that's very significant. Even on a laptop, it's not as powerful there. But on mobile devices, super important.
Super good, right? Because you're just bouncing from Wi-Fi to Wi-Fi all throughout your day, and you never know what you're connecting to, or you're just trusting and assuming all the things that you're connecting to are good for you, which is a bad strategy.
Yep.
Honestly. Bold strategy, Cotton.
Yeah. Let's see how it plays
You'll
out.
see how it plays out.
Now, they added some other features in here that help for managing mobile devices. So if you are a Microsoft 365 customer and somebody uses an Android or iOS phone and they onboard it into your organization, that you can do things like isolating, remote wipe, get alerts to know when somebody tries to connect to one of these rogue networks. So it has some much more mobile-focused offerings, but it's mainly the network protection feature that is what's significant here.
Is this something that's specific only to Defender, or are there competitors out there that kind of do the same thing?
So this particular thing is specific to Defender, but a lot of competition has similar items. They usually have different names or whatever, and I kind of debate how effective they are. It just depends, but
Yeah.
But this is one that's wrapped up into Microsoft Management Suite, so it's a little more attractive.
Yeah. I mean, especially if you've probably got an O365 account anyway for your organization. So,
Yeah.
hey, all the better.
Yeah, is this something you've tried or would put on your phone?
I would, except for me, I'm very, very selective about what networks I connect to.
Mhm.
So when I travel, for example, I almost always just do cellular
Yep.
the whole time. I don't bother with wireless networks when I'm traveling. So I wouldn't necessarily benefit from that angle. But
Especially if you're at the Luxor.
yeah, yeah.
Not me, man. I roll the dice everywhere I go. I'm like, this laptop's the company laptop, not
well,
mine.
I
Let's
care.
connect to super free airport Wi-Fi. Oh, they misspelled Wi-Fi. Well, yeah, it's
Yes.
probably
Yeah, we all make mistakes.
yeah.
I don't like to think of myself as a paranoid person, but even when I'm at my in-laws or something, I'll just
Yeah.
stay on cellular.
What I like to do is just hang like $1,000 cash out of my back
Uh-huh.
pocket as I walk through city streets.
See what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Decide to meet new people.
I still
never
like
know.
our idea of going to Black Hat next year and just trying our best to get hacked.
I think we should do it.
I'm down.
And sadly, it'll just be me doing the normal things I do.
Peter is our control subject.
Like, oh, I didn't know we'd started yet. What? I've been hacked 7 times. All right, well, let's take a look at our next one here, which comes to us from zdnet.com. Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8.7 arrives. And it's what you've been waiting for, the gift for the holiday season here. 8.7 fits right in that red stocking, the Red Hat. So what
Allergies having trouble.
is
isn't it?
new? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if Santa had the fedora on
Yeah,
instead of
that's
the other
true.
thing,
It's a
that
red hat.
would work a lot better. What's new in 8.7 that we should be so excited about?
Well, I actually stopped reporting on minor versions of Red Hat a while back. So, like, we didn't report when 8.6 came out, or I don't think we did 8.5 even, although it was a bit bigger. But this time in 8.7, there's a feature that I think is really cool. Red Hat has baked in a little bit more for their identity and access management or their authentication piece on the system. So in the past, when you configured RHEL, you had a couple of options for how you authenticated users. You had, maybe you had a centralized directory like OpenLDAP or Microsoft's Active Directory. They supported both. Or you just wanted to use Unix authentication with the built-in user accounts. But with the updates to the PAM or pluggable authentication module system in Linux, they could really support whatever they wanted if they chose to do it. Well, in 8.7, they chose. They have choose rated.
They have shows.
Choose a 5.
All right. Well, we're going to learn English today on the podcast.
Chewed?
So they choosed.
It's got a picture of a train on it.
So they chose to add in support for some really neat systems. They've added support for Amazon Web Services IAM, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud Platform, and a handful of others. So you can actually authenticate, like if you deploy RHEL in AWS or even deploy it on-prem, you can have it configured to authenticate against your AWS environment. Really, really slick stuff. So neat to see that added on. And not necessarily a feature everybody wants, but if that's a feature you need, 8.7 is a big deal.
You think it'll integrate with Bob Stupchek's, federated services systems? That would be great.
Yeah, I guess it just depends, doesn't it? I don't know.
They're really leaving him out.
I'd have to look at the spec
I
sheet.
feel like it's personal against Bob.
I do have Microsoft Bob
You
back
do
there in
have
the
Microsoft
background.
Bob,
So
which is his first product.
I don't think it has an authentication system in it, though. Yeah, just blind trust. If you click on the icon with your name, that's good
It
enough.
assumes.
No one else would click that icon.
Why would you even be here? So that said, we got a new version of RHEL. I was also looking through it, and it's talking about like how this incorporates the new Ansible Red Hat's DevOps program.
That feature's stupid.
Is dumb as hell. So they're trying to get a little more friendly. And then, what the hell was this? Where is it? The Podman. I am unfamiliar with these Apparently, I'm late to the
You
game.
don't know Podman?
No, I do not know Podman
Oh, I
or
thought you were
Open
being funny.
Containers Initiative. No.
Is that the new
I'm
Marvel?
This like a rival to Docker, apparently.
Fuck
Docker
it.
came out. Docker worked. They use Docker.
So, just to bring you up to speed real quick, and maybe for our podcast listeners, they're probably all laughing at you.
Yeah,
right now.
as they should.
But Docker was a Silicon Valley unicorn, whatever. Everybody thought this is amazing. It's technology. Everybody adopted it, but they didn't make any money.
Yeah.
And so for years and years and years, they were just hemorrhaging cash, and they had to come up with a way to make some money. And they said, okay, here's what we're going to do. The Docker container image format, that's open source, public, anybody can make containers, and the configuration files and so on, just open. But the Docker desktop environment, that's going to be licensed from now on. If you want to run the Docker desktop environment, you got to pay for that engine to be able to run it. If you buy Windows Server Enterprise Edition, it actually comes with a Docker license, so you can run Docker desktop and not pay. But if you're running Linux or Mac OS or whatever, you got to pay. And anytime an open source product becomes a paid product, which they effectively did, there's going to be an alternative. And Red Hat stepped right in and pushed the Podman initiative. And so Podman is kind of like an open source version of Docker Desktop. So when you go on a RHEL box, and this is actually true of a lot of Linux distros, not just Red Hat, and you type like Docker up, or Docker ls or whatever.
It's like an alias.
You're using the Docker command, but you're actually talking to Podman or Containerd in the background, or both, interacting with each other, and not the Docker desktop at all. You probably don't even have that installed. And so a lot of people looked at it and said, ooh, Docker's going to go out of business. And it's somewhat true. They've been struggling for cash, and they've had a bit of a rough time of it the last couple of years.
Gotcha. So, I mean, obviously, I haven't used Red Hat, and I couldn't tell you when. So that's probably one of the reasons I had been unfamiliar. I was like, what are we talking about here? That it's incorporating the SIG store into its Podman, yada yada. I'm like, I thought Docker was fine. Every time I go for something, I always have a Docker thing. It's always Docker.
It's funny though, like you could be using Podman and not even know it. So there are a lot of people who sit there and say like, well, I'm running,
because everything's, you still use the Docker commands.
That's why instead of saying Docker up, I'll say Podman up.
Yeah.
Podman up, man. Come on.
Podman. Where's your pod, man?
Get over it. All right, let's take a look at the next one, which I had to go back and look at because I was like, this is not the original article that we had. And this one's from Tom's Hardware. And originally, I will go back, when you put in the headline a few days ago, Don, it said Raspberry Pi shortages could last another year, which was a lot more intimidating than what it has changed to now, which is Raspberry Pi CEO talks Pi inventory next-gen boards, because they went back and updated and said, it's not going to last years. It's going to last to about this point next year. Is that correct?
Yeah, but I still feel like that's a bit of marketing spin, right? So
that's wishful thinking.
If you've tried to buy a Raspberry Pi in the last like 6-8 months, it's been a while.
Yeah,
they're out of stock everywhere. You can find some of the higher memory compute modules, right? The all-in-one little boards. You can find some of those, typically overpriced. But the regular Raspberry Pis that are normally in the $30 to $50 range, depending on how much memory you pick, they're out of stock everywhere.
$200.
And they sell on eBay for,
And those are private sellers that have
look 'em up
one.
right
scalpers.
Yeah.
Yep. And so what's happened is, first off, supply chain, right? So supply chain has been a big deal with the COVID pandemic and all that mess. It really kind of gummed up the works.
Still got that evergreen boat that was stuck in the Suez Canal. I think it was full of Raspberry Pis.
Prices have come down.
What, on eBay?
I have seen them up at $200, and now they're hovering right around 100, 120.
So still 4 times.
Yeah,
They're
significantly.
still way more expensive.
Especially for like the low end. If you wanted like a Raspberry, it's the what's the really small one? The 2W or something.
Yeah, it's the Raspberry
I've forgotten its name.
Pi.
Zero. The Raspberry Pi Zero
Yes.
2W.
I had Pico in my head. I know it's not Pico.
No, the Picos, you can buy them all over the
still
place.
like
That's no
crazy.
big deal.
Yeah.
But the Raspberry Pi 2 or Zero 2W is normally $20. And those are selling for $100 left and right.
Yeah.
So really
I
hard to
have one.
find. And so they interviewed the CEO of Raspberry Pi to find out about when we can expect this to end. Now,
He's the one selling them on eBay.
well, so they're actually under a little bit of heat because, believe it or not, they have a ton of them.
Really?
They have warehouses full of these
Right,
things.
but they're not letting you have them.
Is it shipping
Right.
that's
Well,
backed up?
so a couple of years ago, they started partnering with commercial organizations that were making things like smart TVs and other devices where you could power them with a Raspberry Pi.
Okay.
And so they entered into all of these commercial agreements. And when the shortages started happening, they said, well, wait a minute, we just entered into these agreements. We don't want a manufacturer who's creating laptops or TVs or whatever that rely on a Raspberry Pi to not be able to get it. So they reserved the whole set. Like every Raspberry Pi that comes in goes right into their warehouse, and they hold it for those corporate customers. And a lot of people are upset about that because the original version of the Raspberry Pi, or the original intent, was a low-cost computing device to help makers, to help individuals, hobbyists, enthusiasts, to be able to have something to build upon. And so they've kind of turned their back on that. So the CEO has come out and said, look, by the end of 2023, this should all be resolved. And if you want to buy a Raspberry Pi at retail price, you should be able to by December of 2023. Now, there's a lot of shoulds, probablys, we hope. I don't think it's going to happen. With inflation and layoffs and the political turmoil that we've got right now, I really don't see this being resolved by the end of 2023. And it's in his best interest to promote it that way. So I totally get why he came back with a little bit of spin on it. But basically, if you need to buy a Raspberry Pi at retail pricing, good luck for at least the next 6 to 8 months.
Yeah, that's unfortunate too, because they were just such a handy thing to be able to do a bunch of cool projects with.
Yeah.
And that's why they were so popular. And of course, that ran the demand up. And of course, it's just it was a comedy of errors.
So is this the next catalytic converter where criminals will be going into devices they know are run by Raspberry?
Someone's house doing a sneak and creep, and you see a Raspberry sitting on the shelf, you better grab that sucker.
But are there devices out there that maybe we don't use anymore that we don't even know have Raspberries in them?
There can be, yeah. There's certain smart TVs that have the compute modules in them, and there's other devices that people may have built. Like we had that airport weather map.
Yeah,
where it's a Raspberry that's inside of it.
Using that, let's go steal that Raspberry, sell that sucker on eBay. Well, it's not just Raspberry too. I was at the mill on Sunday, and you had to pre-order pumpkin pies 2 weeks out, so not as bad. But it was a lot cheaper. It was like $30, I think.
A lot more compatible too.
Yeah,
and tasty.
Interface with that sucker.
Yeah, you eat the Raspberry, you're gonna wish you hadn't done that.
Yeah, that's.
You might get it down, but it's got to come out eventually. Yeah. That's not a day at the beach for anyone.
Is it like those little packets that say "Do not eat" silica gel? Like, does it say it anywhere in the Raspberry?
Yeah,
because someone's tried.
I know it's called Raspberry.
Justin, looking at you.
I learned something interesting. It has very little to do with this, but the Nintendo Switch, right, uses little tiny cartridges. I don't know if you've seen them or not, right? So they haven't gone to all digital or whatever.
Yeah.
But the little cartridges are actually coated in a chemical called I think it's called a bitterant.
Oh, embittering agent, yeah.
Embittering? Okay, yeah. I'm probably saying it wrong. Where apparently it makes it taste horrible. And that was, they were worried about kids swallowing them.
Yeah.
And so that's what they did. They made them taste bad. I thought that was kind of neat.
They do the same thing with antifreeze. They put an embittering agent into it because antifreeze tastes amazing. Right, like it's like Kool-Aid.
Yeah, you got to get the sugar-free though.
Yeah. Well, what happens is you're out there working on your car or whatever, and you dump out all your antifreeze to work on your engine, and you move it over, and the dog comes over and drinks it all, and they die. Right. So they were like, we got to put something.
That's called natural selection.
And for fun, people were killing their spouses or whoever with it.
Sure.
Because you could put it into a soft drink, and you would know because it was sweet. Right? So it just tasted fine, and they were having all sorts of organ failure. And they were like, oh, it looks like you had a heart attack, or it looks like your pancreas kicked out for whatever reason. We don't know why.
Interesting.
And you have to test for it. Now they put an embittering agent into it. You drink it, you drank it, and it's not good.
So it's not like 9 to 5 where you put the rat poison in the boss's coffee?
No.
Yeah, but can they, because the embittering agents show up on the test, on the autopsy? Just asking for a friend.
I don't know about that, but you're not going to drink it. You're going to take a big swig of your Diet Coke and go, this is Panther piss.
It's like a Crystal Pepsi from 20 years ago.
Yeah, you'd probably rather have that.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if it shows up in the toxicology reports, but I haven't been caught yet. So,
well, I've got some of that spray for the dog. I think it's sour apple that you can spray on things that you don't want them to chew on,
and they don't like it.
I spray that on all my electronics now.
Nice.
Same reason.
I did not like.
None of them work anymore.
I have stopped getting. I bought my last puppy, or got my last puppy. I say bought it. I got my last puppy, like in 2007. I said never again, because they are chew machines. That's all they want to do.
Yeah,
they're chewy.
Chew.
Like a little gamey.
Fine. Dog's a fine meal.
It's just not big enough.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I
for
mean,
the whole family on
yeah,
Thanksgiving.
yeah. St. Bernard.
All right. All right. Well, let's take a look at our next article, which is from, bugs.xdavidhugh.me. That's right. Bugs.xdavidhugh.me. This is an interesting one. It's David Hughes' personal blog, I imagine. It says accidental $70,000 Google Pixel lock screen bypass. And it's actually a really cool read. I kind of got taken in with his storytelling and went down the whole thing. So it is not something that cost Google Pixel users $70,000. $70,000 is the bounty he ended up getting.
Right. I love this, and there were a number of news articles that covered it, but I didn't want to refer to those because here's like his actual story. Yeah. I felt like it really gave us some insight into how a security researcher or an accidental security researcher could stumble upon something like this. It was pretty significant, and what he found was a lock screen bypass that worked basically on every Google Pixel. So there was an engineering fault in the way that it handled certain boot up situations that he could recreate. And basically got it to a situation where anyone could hand him their Pixel phone, and after a few minutes, he could give it back to them unlocked.
So he had to swap the SIM card. So he has to have a SIM card that he knows was it PKU?
The puck,
or PK number 4. So
yeah. So there's a process, and when I started reading it, this is where I found it fascinating because he starts describing like, oh, well, I accidentally locked my PIN, and then I had to get the puck code off of the card from my SIM, and that in Europe is pretty common. Here in the U.S. is not. Most people don't have their puck code. So, but he had to go and get it. And so as I'm reading this, I'm like, all right, this is getting more and more far-fetched, and an attacker's not going to have my puck code. How is this useful? But then he gets to the point that's important: is he could lock his own SIM, and he knows his own puck code, and so he could then go to anybody's phone, power it off, SIM swap, and power it on.
Actually, he did it hot.
Oh, he did it hot.
It was a hot swap. That's what he accidentally forgot to turn the thing off.
That's
when he hot swapped it, and he was like, "Oh, what just happened here?" And then, and he had access to the machine.
Once he punched in the puck code, then it unlocked the phone, regardless of it wasn't even his phone at that point.
So your SIM is in, so easier for you to probably start transferring data.
So take like he gave the example of the FBI, where the FBI was trying to get into phones.
Yeah.
Well, here's a way they could get into any phone
without paying an Israeli company hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And Google has an outstanding bounty of $100,000 for anybody that can do a lock screen bypass. Mm-hmm. And he was like, "Well, I'm about to have a good time." What was also interesting about this article was like how much he had to shout and yell to get them to take him serious. And apparently he wasn't the only one that discovered this. Somebody had actually submitted the same problem to Google and they dismissed it.
And it sounds like they didn't raise as much of a fuss as he did because he's talking to Google engineers. He was at Google events.
Well, I mean, he kind of ran them down.
Yeah. He threatened public disclosure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they passed the 3-month window.
Right.
And so that's responsible disclosure. Right. He was ready to he chickened out in the end. They did go more than 3 months.
Well, I say he chickened out. I think he was just trying to be amicable and be
Well, he also says at the end, and then they said, "Okay, we'll give you $70,000."
Do you want to poke Google in the eye with a stick?
Kind of.
Yeah, okay, well, can't wait to see Don in a gulag or wherever the hell.
I mean, technically,
Google log.
Google log.
Jeez, nice. Technically, I mean, could that come back to bite you the next time you submitted something, or they're like, "Screw you, we don't want to."
Maybe they pay more attention. Like this guy doesn't F around.
This guy finds real stuff.
This is the Charles Bronson of bug reporters.
Now, this isn't like a pants on fire moment. Like the attacker still has to have physical access to your phone, but this is absolutely something that like like a malicious government, state actors or whatever,
like insider threats. Like let's say you had somebody on the inside at a government facility, and you leave your phone on your desk and go to the bathroom, and he walks over and just pop, and now I'm in. I can
or like you said in a criminal case. I mean, the same cases we talked about Apple. I think Apple was the San Bernardino shooting years ago. Is what they're originally the case. I mean, so if that had been a Pixel instead,
they would have. With this, they'd have been right in.
Yeah.
I think of it in terms of like if I'm ever when you travel between countries now, there's always a chance that they may seize your phone and ask you to unlock it.
Yeah, they say turn it off. Like if you're so they can't like force you to look at it or something for
Yeah.
Face ID and all that.
And if you say no, well, they might just say okay, and then walk off with your phone, and they can unlock it now,
Yeah.
right? And so that's the real risk. So if,
Is there virtualization for like Android and iOS that runs on Android and iOS?
at RSA a few years ago, there was a company that was demonstrating just that.
Really?
But the problem was it was hard for them to support different phones, and so
Yeah,
they
of
had picked like
course.
one model that they were developing on. But they had where there were virtual environments for your personal and work,
Yeah.
and so you could flip between them. A few companies have tried to do that over the years. I don't think anybody's really been successful with it.
Gotcha.
Well, what's cool about this one is, I'm not a tech guy. I'm not a hacker. I'm not a coder. I could do this. If you gave me your phone with the steps are so simple that
Oh, yeah.
it's
Yeah.
easy
It is
enough for
extremely
anybody
simple.
to get in there.
Let me. This was on Android. Have you upgraded to an iPhone 14 yet?
I just did.
So you now have an eSIM. You can't do this type of attack when you have an eSIM.
Haha.
Aha, because there is no like.
There's no
physical
SIM card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I could go buy a SIM card.
There's no SIM slot on your phone.
Yeah.
No, I mean to do this attack to a Pixel user.
Oh,
Oh,
right.
yes.
Oh,
Oh,
yes.
I see
Yeah,
what you're
I see what you're saying. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
You could pull this off on an Android phone, absolutely. But there are technologies in place that are designed to make it where this type of attack is not possible.
And so just know that the jealous lovers everywhere
Yeah.
are capable of doing this.
I wonder if people in the NGO are like, they.
But it's
totally
patched
burned
now.
us.
It's patched.
It
Or
is?
the patch is available.
It is patched, although in the Android world, their track record
Yeah, there
for
is a
deploying updates is pretty abysmal.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Well, it's a cool one.
Who's got time to do that?
Yeah, and we'll put the link as we always do in YouTube there, and I would suggest taking a read because it's interesting to kind
It
of
was
hear
a
his
great
story.
read.
Yeah, how he goes, continuing to raise the flag and yell when they weren't paying attention, and as a result earned himself $70,000 that could have easily been zero had he.
And they told
not
him initially it
yelled
was
about
going to be
Yeah.
zero.
Yeah.
This is a duplicate.
Yeah,
And
as they will do.
We've already decided.
All right, tell you what, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. We're going to look at who got pwned. We're also going to give you a moment to go grab your tinfoil hats because we're going to do tinfoil hat time coming up right after this on Technado.
My name is Dana Morrison. I'm the IT director at Grace Christian School in Raleigh, North Carolina. I work with two technicians, Buddha and Anthony. We cover all grades at the school. We figure that we support approximately 800 end-user devices.
My name is Buddha Nepal. I work as IT support here and AV specialist. I moved into IT department and on our first meeting, other team members asked me, hey, what's your IT background? And I was like, I don't have any. We had this SharePoint project that we were rolling out. So I was able to go to IT Pro TV and watch. And by the end of this month, we were actually migrating all our files to SharePoint.
I can use IT Pro TV's supervisor portal to check the progress of my technicians so I can see what they're looking at. So when we were doing SharePoint training, I can go in and I can see that Buddha is hitting on that content.
I really want to see hands-on how they do things, and if there was an IT Pro TV, I don't know how I would have done that.
IT Pro TV has given us the ability to level up our technicians to a point where they can decide this is important for me to learn and go out and learn it.
At home, I have Apple TV, and there is an app there, and so I actually watch on Apple TV. I watch it in my iPad too.
Saturday mornings, I still get up early, 6:30, I go grab a cup of coffee, I sit down on the couch, and I typically watch 2 or 3 episodes as I just kind of increase my own learning skill set. I would recommend IT Pro TV to any IT team that is looking to extend their knowledge. It offers a great, easy to access, interactive, entertaining environment. It's just a great tool for any IT professional.
The IT Pro TV app is available for iOS and tvOS. The modern user interface makes navigation easy. Recently watched videos can be found on the home screen, as well as our daily live streams. Choose landscape mode for larger viewing. Access the entire course library by clicking on the play icon. Navigate our content by category, certification, and job role. Learn where you want and when you want as a premium annual member by downloading episodes for offline viewing. Watch on the go and pick up later on any of your favorite devices. So head to the App Store and download the IT Pro TV app.
All right, welcome back to Technado, and I think I said, did I say before the break that we're going to find out who got pwned? That's not true.
That's not true.
That's not true.
Lies.
No one was pwned this last week. First time
Pixels
in American history. So yeah, Google Pixel. But we are going to find out who is now behind bars.
Break the law,
I don't want to go to
and
any
you'll
prison.
go to jail.
No, straight to jail.
Samir
Straight to
from
jail.
Office
Office
Space.
Federal person.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. I love the Parks and Rec one. This straight to jail.
Straight to jail.
Yeah, you cook fish at the office, straight to jail.
Yeah.
All right, this one is from arstechnica.com. LockBit ransomware suspect nabbed in Canada apologizes. No, faces charges in the U.S. And so my question about this one, and I couldn't really tell from reading it, is this a person that used LockBit, or since it's ransomware as a service, is this a person that wrote LockBit? Because it sounds like, since it's ransomware as a service, even the person that wrote it is getting a cut of any ransoms.
This person was involved in the actual creation and proliferation of LockBit.
Okay. So anyone then that used it, they're technically kind of on the hook for as a potential charge.
Yeah, if they get found out.
Yeah.
And we don't know how locked down this all is, and how if there's honor among thieves and they don't rat out other people. Which
I'm sure they
likely
kept
will.
records.
We know that there's no honor among
We got access to his QuickBooks file. So
There are a number of challenges here, and one you bring up already, Peter, is the LockBit ransomware. It was really I don't want to call it like advanced, ahead of its time, because it's criminal stuff, but it was fully automated is kind of the big thing with it, and so it spread faster than just about any other ransomware.
So I was like, I don't want to be nice to this thing.
Yeah.
But it was really cool.
It's really advanced, yeah.
the coolest criminals.
Oh man.
So it affected literally thousands of businesses around the world were hit by this in what is effectively extortion and all the various crimes that go along with it. So they arrested one person involved in the LockBit ransomware scheme. There's obviously going to be like 7 or 8 people that are involved in it at the heart. This is just one person. So it's not the whole gang, unfortunately, but they got one.
His name is Frank LockBit, which is his first mistake is naming the product after himself.
After yourself.
They do actually give his name, Mikhail Vasiliev, probably.
Bradford, Ontario, Canada.
And this is kind of interesting. There's a few things in here that I think are a little bit ridiculous, and it helps to explain why ransomware is still a problem today. The first is he was arrested by the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. So he was entering Canada, and he was arrested.
I just always assume they're on horseback too, because it's Mounted Police.
Sure. Is the Royal Canadian Mounted?
Yeah, I assume they're just rolling up on the horses and like, come on, buddy.
Somebody made in the comments. They were like, "It's not CMP. You can't just leave the R off. They are the
Royal
Canadian Mounted Police."
But he was arrested in Canada and is facing charges here in the United States. As he should be facing charges all over the world, right?
Yeah, he's made friends, hasn't he?
But the first ridiculous thing is that the way our laws are written, he's facing up to 5 years in prison.
Oh man, I bet he'll learn his lesson.
5 years of hard time, which really is like 1 year and then 4 years of probation.
Well, wait, is it like 5 years of him turning big rocks into little rocks? Or 5 years of like, hey, what's on TV today, guy?
I don't think they do hard labor anymore, do they?
I don't think so. But it turns out if he also had 1 ounce of marijuana on him, it could be up to 50 years.
Yeah.
So
I mean, an ounce of marijuana is a pretty good amount. He was ready to party.
so's all this malware.
He was like, man, I'm in that malware money.
Ransomware.
Who needs an OZ?
Yeah, so that's kind of frustrating. It's hard to deter these types of criminal activities when the penalties just don't match up.
I'm shocked that it doesn't count as each instance is a new charge. That could be an additional 5 years of if this was used 100 times, say, shouldn't that be 100 charges?
Maybe. Now, see, if they go that route, if it's like 5 years per incident.
Now he's screwed.
Yeah,
he's done it. Yeah.
And that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
When they arrested him, they seized a couple of firearms, 8 computers, 32 external hard drives, and $405,000 in cryptocurrency, which is like, what, 5 Bitcoin or something. So he had a lot of interesting stuff on him, and is apparently the criminal. But there was one quote in here that really stood out for me, and it was at the end.
From Samir,
not gonna work here anymore.
FBI Deputy Director Paul Abate, or however you say it, he said, this successful arrest demonstrates our ability to maintain and apply relentless pressure against our adversaries. And that, to me, doesn't sound true. Like, this guy was a dual Russian and Canadian citizen, and he felt comfortable enough to be able to move between the countries. Like, what kind of pressure are we talking about here? I don't feel like he was under pressure at all.
It was social pressure, really. It was just mostly
peer pressure.
just like people saying, you're really bad. And he's like, I want to get, invited to parties and stuff, and you're keeping me from this. Stupid Americans.
Yeah, well.
Like, do something.
What's sad, it's probably, I don't know what if he broke any other laws, but you're right. He could face more for the firearms charges if they're like illegal guns or something than that other law. But that's one of those things that's got to change, or they have to treat those as separate.
Send him to like Black Dolphin, and 5 years there would definitely be.
That change his life.
Yeah.
And we might be about to see change. We have to wait and see. There was an article, I didn't pick it for this week because we didn't have enough information on it, but an Australian healthcare organization got hit with ransomware, and they refused to pay, and the ransomware threat actors released all this medical data on these Australian citizens. And so the Australian government put out some very aggressive verbiage. They said, basically, this means war. We're coming after you. You've gone too far. This has got to stop.
Yeah.
And so they used all the language that the United States used when starting the war on drugs.
Yeah.
And so if we see that kind of response, like the war on drugs response, but war on ransomware, we might actually see a difference.
Yeah, because
Blank check.
Well, it gets into that. You've seen the chart, right? It's like you've got the XY axis, and it's like around. The more you do that, the more you find out.
Yeah, it is
all right, and that's
equal to the amount of effing around the finding out.
Yeah, that's it.
We'll find out more.
That came from Australia, and if other countries get on board, if they get really aggressive with this stuff, we might see a difference. But if we keep doing this whole maybe you get 5 years type thing, it's not going to change.
Yeah, and we're going to take your computer too.
Yeah, no computer for you.
You're grounded.
Yeah, you're correct. We're like a suburban dad disciplining his children.
All right, now let's go for ice cream.
Yeah, come on, buddy.
I'm not angry.
Dad still
just
loves
disappointed.
Yeah.
Oh, don't hit him with that. Don't hit him with that.
Oh man, that cuts right to the bone.
That stings. All right, well, let's take a look at the last one here, which is going to be our tinfoil hat time.
Landing was fake. Paul McCartney's been dead since 1966.
Dogs can't see color.
5G causes syphilis.
Do you understand that?
That is all potentially true information, as is this from 9to5mac.com. U.S. Army iOS app among thousands that unknowingly used Russian code. Dun, dun. So we're in the same key there, too. What's not shocking here, because probably most iOS apps were written with Russian code, because so many of them are outsourced. Wasn't our app made in Russia originally?
It was originally outsourced through a company, that was out there.
That's why it's hard to get updates now. So why is this tinfoil hat? Is this not true? Or is it the fact that Russian code means it's compromised?
So it's tinfoil hat because there are a lot of people that are paranoid about Russians being in our system, being everywhere, right? In our utilities grid, in our software, like the whole Huawei thing about the Chinese government being able to control our networks. But there is some truth to it, in that a lot of what we use is developed overseas, and regardless of whether it's Russia or China or even some of our partners and allies like
Mongolia,
France and the UK.
Look out for.
Yeah. Which is Mongolia part of China?
No, I don't believe so.
I believe it is.
I think it's its own
Oh, wait,
country.
there's like Upper Mongolia, and I don't know.
I want to say Mongolia
Is Mongolia?
Well, either way,
part of China?
anytime you leverage outside organizations like that, you're effectively creating a backdoor into your infrastructure. And so that's a real fear that a lot of people have. Now, in this case, it's somewhat warranted, because what we're seeing is, back a couple of years ago, really, when the conflict between the United States and the Russian Federation started to pick up. So this was really back when President Trump was in office, and the relations between the countries started to fall apart. The U.S. government started saying, look, we can't use Russian developers for anything anymore, or really just Russian goods and services anymore. That got stronger over time. And once the war in Ukraine started, then it went super aggressive. Like U.S. companies aren't allowed to do business in Russia right now because of the embargoes. So it's gotten very strict. Well, that's one of the reasons why, like if you have an app. Well, we did this, right? Where we had an app that had some developers. We had to stop using those developers. Yeah. And that's just the way it is. You got to stay legal. You can't kind of flaunt the law. Well, that's put a lot of Russians in a bad situation. And Daniel and I had a conversation about this a while ago, is that not every Russian is a bad person, right? There's tons and tons of good people in the Russian Federation.
Who's the good and who's the bad, right? And you're going to be, persecuting people that ain't done nothing wrong. All they're trying to do is make a living, get through the world.
Yeah.
And they just happen to live in Russia.
And it's just like here in the United States, that sometimes you have politicians that don't match up with what you think, and that doesn't make you a bad person. It might make them a bad person. I don't know. But so when we take an action like what we've done against the Russian Federation, which we have to do, right? We have to take action. It does affect a lot of people. But there are some of these development firms that are not acting in good faith, that are doing what we see here. Is there was a app service called Push Swoop, or Swoop
Whoosh. Push Whoosh.
Push Whoosh. There we go. I got the name wrong. Push Whoosh. That was basically a service you could bolt on to any mobile app to be able to handle push notifications. And so tons of apps use this Push Whoosh library and the services from that company. And the company said, look, we're not Russian. We're an American company. We're based out of Washington, D.C.
Got a guy at a strip mall right now.
And here's our address, and we're an American company. But meanwhile, they were registered in Russia. They all worked and lived in Russia. They just had an address. They had a friend who lived in D.C. I think they had a California address and a few others that were just either fake addresses or somebody they knew, so they could use the address to say
coin laundry.
Yeah, and it was enough to snow the U.S. Army. So the U.S. Army had Push Whoosh in some of their apps.
I feel secure.
And so, that's an example where these companies have willfully deceived. And for us in IT, it puts a little bit of a burden on us. We have to wear our tinfoil hat. We have to be paranoid. And anytime we deal with an outsourcing company, we can't just say, all right, what country are you based out of? And just trust them. Like, we have to do a little bit of research.
It's one of those instances where just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not following you. Right. Yeah.
And I've had this happen firsthand. So, when we had a developer that was based out of Russia, and they said, well, actually, we're registered in Delaware, so we're registered as a U.S. company. And I said, well, that doesn't matter. Your developers are in Russia. And they said, well, we can give you a U.S.-based project manager. Okay, that doesn't matter. The developers are still in Russia. We can't do that. And so, I had to sever ties with that organization. So, that's something that we have to do. We're responsible for that as IT professionals and people in this career. And it kind of stinks that we have to do that vetting. And a lot of good people are going to get hurt, or already being hurt by this.
Collateral damage.
It really is.
Yep.
And
unfortunate.
Speaking of collateral damage, I would like to apologize to all the people of Mongolia, which is a sovereign, democratic, free country that is right between China and Russia.
One of 3 countries that is touching both China and Russia.
Yeah, it's the largest landlocked country in the world.
Is it really?
By area. And
you did it, Mongolia.
I know. Congratulations. That big sea dried up. Thanks, climate change. But they were actually part of China until 1911, and then they're like, we should be part of Russia.
And John
so they were a satellite state of Russia. And they're like, this
them.
isn't working either. So 1989, then they became their own little place there.
I did not know that. Today I learned.
Great country and great barbecue.
It is indeed
barbecue.
That Mongolian beef, man.
But I stand there at that line going, man, there's just raw meat. And people are just coming up and grabbing it with their little tongs, and
then it gets set on like 500-degree heat.
But you hope it does, because it's right next to the raw vegetables. So if someone's like, "Let me have some broccoli and a little bit of raw chicken," wow, delicious.
All right.
Doesn't
Well,
seem to stop you, though, does it?
That's dumb. Yeah, I say that as I'm picking
he's
it up
like,
and putting it
"This
on my
is
plate.
really bad
This
idea."
is a mistake, but yeah.
So-
yeah, great place.
there is something I want to add on to this, back on topic, which
Okay.
is, there's some people wonder, why we can't use these developers that are outside like this. And the challenge that we have, and the U.S. Army is the greatest example of this, is when you have developers in another country, especially a country that is communist or has a dictatorship in place or something like that, any data they collect, they may well be required to turn over to the government and do that in a way that they don't even have to report it to you. And so for your like Christmas wish list app, that's not a big deal. But if you're the U.S. Army, remember that article from last year where it was like the Fitbit watches?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I do.
It gave away the location of a secret base. Like,
You're like, hey, there's all these guys running around doing laps.
What is
at this
going
one
on
place.
here?
absolutely true. And so that's where this isn't just paranoia. Like, this is real. I don't know if this would be classified as OSINT or whatever, but where you can be leaking information out of the country, even if you're doing full code review and all that before publishing. So that's why these restrictions are in place.
Man, it's a rough world out there, folks. Security needs to get tighter. So sometimes that's just going to mean having to go, I don't know whether I can trust you, so I'm going to not trust you. And that's just unfortunate.
That's zero trust? Is that
Zero trust.
basically? All right.
It's a weird world right now.
It is.
If you had asked me back in January, by the end of 2022, would we have a war in Ukraine that's lasted over 6 months and full embargoes against Russia? I wouldn't have believed that.
Yeah. That's
And have you heard, what's this BRICS thing? Have you heard of BRICS? Like it's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa are coming together to form and they're creating their own like cryptocurrency or some sort of currency. And it's supposed to like rival the petrodollar. It's like, there's some weird stuff going on right now.
Eh.
because crypto is in such a good place right now. That
Well, I mean, maybe
the show is sponsored by FT. Oh, no, it's not anymore. I'm told. Yeah, we're going to have to shut the lights off.
Yeah.
Just can't afford this anymore. All right, want to let you know about a couple things coming up. We have a really fun one, the IT Pro Turkey Bowl, because why do a webinar when you can have fun this holiday season? So Thursday, November 17th, same day that this is coming out, we're going to be doing the Turkey Bowl, and I've got a bunch of games, kind of minute-to-win-it style games, having two teams. I'll be one of the hosts of that, so I'm really excited to be doing that. And not only will we have winners of the Turkey Bowl here, but you can win at home because we're going to be giving away some gifts. So be sure to tune into that live, 2 p.m. Eastern time. And if you didn't win and didn't get to watch live, you can still go back and watch it, have a lot of fun on the archives. We're putting that up over at itpro.tv/webinars, even though it's not a webinar, but that's kind of taking the place of the webinar that week. So you can see it there and see the archive of it after the fact. And let's see what else. We've got the 12 Days of IT coming up very soon. That's going to start the Monday after Thanksgiving here in the U.S., which I think is the 28th, where we're going to do 12 unboxings. And then on the last day, which is December 9th, we're going to do a YouTube Live and give away all 12 of those cool tech gadgets, things ranging from travel routers and hard drive duplicators to really cool little hard drive clock. I've got some Raspberry Pi stuff, if we can get our hands on one. We'll see. And yeah, all cool stuff coming up. So check that out over at itpro.tv/12days. And that's where you can register to win all of those items. All right. I think. Oh no, I want to also mention that you can head over to Technado.com and you can see all the latest episodes. You can grab some swag. You can reach out and let us know that you live in Mongolia and are mad at us for not knowing that you are a country.
I knew,
not just a region.
You didn't.
Daniel.
Sorry, my bad. Right there by the Gobi Desert.
Don't chuck me under the
Did you
bus.
know back in 1911 that 1/3 of the male population were monks? All things I've learned on Wikipedia as I've sat here while you guys are
That's
talking about
fun.
like computers or something.
I'm actually, so I was learning more about BRICS, and it was like they are creating a reserve currency, not a cryptocurrency.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
okay, that makes more sense. But yeah, check out all that, and you can click the big orange button that says "Sponsored by IT Pro," and you can get a 20. What is it? 20%, 30%,
30,
40%, 30.
I think it's 30.
30% off of your personal membership to IT Pro. So check that out. You can also request a demo for a team, and find out all the great features available to teams from IT Pro, and try that out as well. If you got 2 or more people, that's the way to go. So check all that out. Just to let you guys know a little programming note, we are switching podcast providers. The person that does the hosting for the podcast is actually going out of business at the end of the year.
Well, there's that.
It could be
Powered by FTX.
Yeah,
it could be that.
Probably great podcasts like ours that have really
Run them into the ground. What's how big these files are, because we just go on and on talking about Thanksgiving movies. So we're switching providers. You can definitely still find the podcast on YouTube, but it should be seamless. We're changing the RSS feeds on the different providers, but if you do see any interruptions, you're like, hey, it hasn't come out today, just go check it out on YouTube until that gets worked out. But again, it should be seamless. And if there are any problems, let us know over at technado.com with the forum there. If there's a particular podcast service that you use that it's not showing up at, we'll check into that for you for sure. But yeah, that should be it. So we will be back next week. We will have an episode right before Thanksgiving. We'll put it out on Thanksgiving. So if you need an escape from the family, that is there for you. Or if you're in another country like Mongolia that does not celebrate Thanksgiving, well, now I got to check that.
Yeah.
Because maybe they do.
The Mongolian Thanksgiving coincidentally falls on the same day.
Yes. Mongolian Black Friday. It's crazy.
Turns out there were 2 groups of pilgrims, right? One went east and one went west.
Mongolians, yeah.
Mongolia
across the Gobi Desert.
Sure. That's a tough trip, I'm sure.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks all of you for watching, and we'll see you next week right here on Technado.